Hi everyone, welcome back to Creatively Crafted Life. This is Melanie, and today I am bringing you a card, in particular a Father's Day card. And I can't believe it's June already, and we need to get these cards out and in the mail very quick if they're going to make it all the way to Canada in time. So I quickly put this card together, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you some of my thought process, some of the things that went wrong along the way, and how it turned out. So first of all, I'm using the dies from MFT. They're just called triangles. And I'm also using a really old Sizzlet die. I believe it's the Naturally Serif alphabet in order to make this card. So there's no stamping involved. It's all die cutting. And it should come together really quick if you know what you're doing, but I do run into a couple issues. So I am using some 6x6 paper that I have in my stash. It's pretty old. I think it might be Authentique, but I'm not really sure. The point is just find 4 or 5 coordinating designs or patterns that you have enough to cut up some triangles out of. So I did that. And then I'm using one of the pages that looks a little more like reads a little bit more like a solid, and using that to cut out the letters Dad from that particular cardstock. So that's what you see here. In the little bowl, I have all my triangles cut out. And remember, this is double-sided paper, so I have patterns on both sides from, I believe I did it from 4 different sheets. So quite a bit of variety of options available. And I've got the larger triangles and the smaller triangles. So my first thought is what you see here is just doing something very linear. And it's okay, there's nothing wrong with it, but I thought it could be a little bit more interesting. So we're gonna switch it up. I'm gonna make it vertical as opposed to horizontal, and put Dad in the center, and then I'm just gonna build these or stagger these triangles around the Dad sentiment. Now my thought is that at some point I will pop some of these up with using foam adhesive, and some will be glued directly onto the paper directly. That's the thought process, and this is where I'm at. So I've got a basic layout. You just saw me take a photo of it, and that's because I'm going to do a little bit of manipulating with this, and I want to make sure I can remember what my initial layout was. So I took a Sharpie pen, and what you see here is me just outlining the edges of the triangles, and I am just doing this freehand. And if it's crooked, that's okay. It's, what's the right word? Let's just call it organic. I'm going with the organic look. If you're really OCD about this type of thing, you can always use a ruler, of course. I just figured I like it a little bit looser, and it's also quicker, which is important. So I've got these teeny tiny foam squares, and I am just randomly putting them on a few of the different triangles. I'm making sure that some of them are the larger and some of them are the smaller. And as you can see, my design's kind of getting messed up a little bit. And that's okay, because remember, I took a photo. So that's all good. So we're just going to finish this up here. And then basically at this point, it's just a matter of sticking everything down. Now, I did want Dad to be centered. And so what you're going to see me here, use a ruler to kind of draw very lightly or very faintly a line across the horizontal as well as across the vertical, so that I kind of know where the center of the card is. And this particular ruler here I got a long time ago, but it's one of those centering rulers on one side where in the middle it starts with 0 and then it goes out on either side so that you know exactly where the middle is really quickly. So I just drew a very faint line, and now I'm just going to check from the other direction so I know where I'm going to put the letter A to start off with. Before I started with the rulers, I had 2 different types of glue in my hand. One was the Stampin' Up! Liquid glue in the fine tip applicator bottle. That's what you see here. And the other was the Tombow Mono Multi. So I did need some tweezers. I tried without. It was a little bit difficult to adhere the letters because they are quite fine. And you know what? Despite all my best efforts of drawing all those lines, that A is still crooked. And it's going to drive me crazy. But anyways, we're going to continue. So I'm laying down the D as well as the other D here. Oh, see? This is where I notice that it's crooked. Trying to see if I can get it to move, but that glue is pretty what's the right word? It dries pretty quickly, or it adheres very quickly, so you don't have that much wiggle room. But at this point, I'm thinking, you know what? I can live with the crooked A. It'll be all right. All is good. See, it's really crooked. It does bother me, but I'm still going with it because, time's a waste in here and we got to get this card out. So now I'm just taking the different triangles and adhering them. So that one's on a pop dot. The other one's glued directly onto the card base. And they are a mirror of each other, or a reflection of each other, I guess. Opposites. Symmetrical. Maybe that's the best word. Symmetrical. And so whatever I do on the one half of the card, I flip it over and do on the other so that I can keep them symmetrical, because it would be very easy to get confused. At least I could get very easily confused. So it's just really simple to put this together at this point. Like I said, it's just a matter of peeling off the backing with the dimensionals and adding some glue and then laying them down. So now, and of course I worry about the orientation of the patterns, so I got to play with that a little bit. And I do want them to be somewhat aligned, because it is such a graphic card, and it's fairly simple in its design. I do want it to be fairly straight, even though that A is crooked. And I know I'm going on and on and on about it. It gets worse. So my intent is that some of the triangles go off the card. I do like that look. I think it looks a little more natural, if that's the right word, or a little more pleasing to the eye in any event. So when I affix those larger triangles and they go off the edge, I just make sure I don't put any adhesive at the bottom end of it, so that I don't have to worry about getting glue everywhere. So at this point, I'm just going to trim off the excess. That's pretty easy. I find flipping it over so I can see the solid line helps. And, at this point, you could leave the card as is, other than erase the pencil lines, which is what I'm doing here. And at this point, I noticed that the glue that I used seeped out of the edges of the word dad, and it really bothered me because it wasn't matte. It did have a bit of a shine. So I was using a sand eraser to try and clean that up. And then I thought the letters kind of got lost a little bit. Plus I couldn't get all that glue off. So I thought, well, maybe if I outline it in black, it will make the word dad pop out a little bit more, and maybe it will mask some of that glue. And what ended up happening was I did a terrible outlining job. You can't really see it here because it's zoomed out, but I made a few mistakes, and the lines got a little thicker than I wanted to in some places. And then this pen didn't go over very well over the glue that had dried. So I had to go over it a few times, and then it got rougher, and then it looked terrible, in my opinion. And it really accented the fact that A was crooked. So, opportunity to be creative. And what I did was, from some of that dark green that I had originally cut the words dad out of, I decided to make a banner instead. And then I took some of the light blue cardstock and then cut the word dad out again. And we're just going to make a banner, and we're going to cover the whole thing up. And no one will know the difference other than you and me. And we're not going to tell anybody, right? So to make the banner, I just cut a strip of paper wide enough for the letters, as well as to cover, or not too wide, so that it extended on top of the larger triangles there. So basically just wide enough for the letters to live. And then I trimmed it down to size, and then on the ends I just cut a slit halfway up the middle, and then I just connected to the two corners to make the banner tails. And then because I had outlined all the triangles, I thought I should outline the banner just for a cohesive look, and I really like that. I'm going to take some of that Tombow mono glue, and I'm going to glue this down, leaving two ends or two of the flag corner bits up. And you can see that here I'm just kind of peeling them up a little bit. And then I figured if I threw a little pop dot or foam adhesive behind that, that would just make sure it didn't flatten when it went through the mail. And so what you see here is how I just tucked that in under one end on either side, and they are on opposite ends. And that just gives a little bit of dimensions. And then I thought, it's still a little plain. It actually is quite fine at that point. You do not need to do this, but I always seem to need to go that one extra step, and I had these wood dots, and I apologize. It was so far zoomed in that you couldn't really see that. But that is basically the card, and it's going in the mail, and my dad should get it shortly. And I hope you enjoyed, and until next time, happy crafting.